Let me just share another screen. Okay, guys, here are the same four pieces of advice, or four words that we can use, four phrases that we can use for advice, with some example sentences. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we're looking at four different ways of giving advice. Number one is you should. This is just for general advice. It's casual. It's probably the most common way to give advice. You know, you should exercise. You should call your friend and apologize. Okay, that's the most common. Now, we said you ought to is the same as should, but it's a little bit more formal. It's more business-like. Okay, we use it more at work. We use it more in like places of work or meetings and things like that, in formal settings. To give you an example of you ought to in a sentence, we have here the first sentence: you ought to study more if you want to pass the test. You ought to is followed by verb one. Okay? You ought to followed by verb one. You ought to study. If you look at the second sentence, ought to is again followed by verb one. You ought to visit. So the second sentence is like someone, this person might be new in your country, or he's a tourist and he wants some advice. You can say to them, hey, you ought to visit the museum. It's amazing. It's fascinating. So should and ought to are very similar, except ought to is more formal. Then we have number three, you had better. This is a stronger way of giving advice or a warning. For example, you had better leave now or you'll miss your train. This is something you'd say to someone who's running late for their train, right? They don't have a lot of time. So you'd be like, hey, you better leave now or you'll be late for the train. Or if you look at the second sentence, this is like when it's raining outside, bad weather, and you have a guest at home and they're about to leave your house, you could say, hey, you'd better take an umbrella. It might rain. Okay? This is the strongest way of giving advice or a warning. And then finally, if I were you. This can be used in a casual way, but also in a formal way. And it's a way of putting yourself in their position. If I were you, I'll talk to the teacher about it. If I were you, I wouldn't skip breakfast. You know, if I were you, I'll study hard for my exam. Yes, Marianne.
Haman.
Did you want to say something?
No, teacher.
You had your hand up.
Oh, no. Oh, excellent, teacher.
No problem. No problem. Anyone else? Mona, did you want to say something?
No, teacher.
Okay. Please lower your hand if you don't have anything to say. Okay. So there we have it. The last one is if I were you. This is my favorite one because it's not rude. It's a very polite way and it's a nice way of giving advice, right? If I were you, I would study really hard for my exam.
Can I give you example for this?
Yes.
Okay. I will try the last two one.
Okay.
And then, okay. If I were you, I would go to the gym.
Thank you for the advice, Hafsa. I didn't know I was that big, but
Okay. The next one, you had better
Yes.
stop talking to me, otherwise I will pissed off.
Excellent. That's a great sentence. Yes, a great sentence. So the second one was more of a warning, right? And the
Yeah.
first one was like advice. Yeah.